A couple more updates have been provided on Justin Ishbia increasing his stake in the White Sox. Let's go over if this is just a way for owner Jerry Reinsdorf to get a new stadium or something more on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, 670 The Score's Dan Bernstein, CHGO's Jared Willis, and ESPN 1000's David Kaplan all provided additional details to Justin Ishbia attempting to increase his stake in the White Sox and what it can mean for the stadium project on the 78 and the billionaire eventually taking over the team. Then the team on the field got absolutely rocked in the third spring training game. I'll talk about how this game adds on from the first two games as a preview of a terrible season to come. And finally, there is no third base competition, according to Will Venable. All right, so there's more detail on John Greenberg's report in The Athletic that Chicago-based area billionaire Justin Ishbia has abandoned his pursuit of buying the Minnesota Twins with the intention of increasing his minority stake in the White Sox, with eventually taking full control of the team from owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Greenberg himself provided additional context in an interview with local radio sports talk station 670 The Score. Then longtime host Dan Bernstein added some additional context in Ishbia's involvement, specifically regarding the team's pursuit of a new stadium on the vacant land known as the 78. Also, Jared Willis of CHGO provided what he has learned on the CHGO White Sox podcast with former host of this show, Sean Anderson. So he shared that. And then finally, David Kaplan of ESPN 1000 and the Recap YouTube channel, he provided what he has learned. So I want to share all those details of what's been going on because this is huge news, White Sox fans. This is definitely the biggest ray of sunshine potentially that could, part these dark clouds that's just been hanging over this franchise for the past couple of seasons. One theme is you should probably have some guarded optimism, as Bernstein described on his show, Bernstein and Harris, when it comes to Ishbia taking over at some point. Another theme, Jerry wants to plan out his succession. However, he wants to do it in his own time and not be pushed into making this announcement right now. But the biggest theme is this will likely help the White Sox secure some funding from the state of Illinois, as Ishbia can provide additional private funding so the Sox can increase their contribution to the projected $1.2 to almost $1.9 billion cost of a new ballpark on the vacant land known as the 78. Because as of right now, Jerry is promising barely anything. He's promised up to $200 million. And the state of Illinois has come out and pretty much said, no, you got to pony up a lot more and basically only ask for infrastructure help. So according to Bernstein, and these are the notes I took, Ishbia's involvement allows for the state to remain open to committing funding, at least when it comes to like infrastructure funding, like roads, off-ramps. You're talking about accessing this park with water taxis, so maybe you might want to build some bridges too. That type of stuff for the entire public benefit to access this venue, but not only that, like get around the city, because once this vacant piece of land is developed, it will be Chicago's 78th neighborhood, hence why it's called the 78. Anyways, basically, the White Sox are still waiting on the Bears to stop their bluffing about wanting to stay in Chicago and just go out and build in Arlington Heights. And then the state would also commit to infrastructure costs because, as the reports have said, the state kind of wants one big bundled package to take care of the Bears stadium situation and the White Sox stadium situation. And again, with the intention of just like infrastructure costs, like sewers, things like that, things where it does make sense to maybe help a private entity build, something where people will come to, and there is some economic benefit, obviously, to the stadiums. It's way overblown than what the teams promise, obviously, but there is some benefit when you invest in infrastructure costs and stuff like that. Although, side note, the state did say if the Bears went to the old Michael Reese Hospital site, there could be some additional infrastructure funding since that is a neighborhood revitalization project. So I wonder how that would impact things in terms of like, would Jerry try to tap into that? We don't know. But either way, Bernstein said the Bears need to figure out what they are doing, and then the state will address the Sox desire. But again, it's got to be more private funding. So basically the summary I got from listening to Bernstein's report, nothing is going to change ownership-wise, at least short-term, but it could really help the White Sox build Jerry's legacy park on the 78. And remember, Jerry isn't taking up golf on his 89th birthday, which is today. So you and I are stuck with him, still wanting to carry out his hobby, which is being a terrible baseball owner. So that's one of the reasons why he's probably not going to give up control like tomorrow or in 6 months or a year. But Willis learned that Jerry's intention is to have a clear plan for leaving the team in Chicago upon his passing. Having Ishbia buy the team and providing funding for the new stadium obviously provides both. Basically, Jerry wants to move the team in a positive direction before he passes away. And again, he's turning 89 today. Cap's report is that this purchase will come with Justin Ishbia getting a seat on the board. Jerry will still be in charge of the team for now, but there will be options to purchase. Definitely the valuation of options to purchase on the minority stakeholders is going to be at the $1.8 billion team valuation. And I think he kind of, Cap, what I was trying to interpret from what he was saying is that that's probably the valuation of the total what Ishbia would buy the team for, or at least, full control and buy out all these minority shareholders. Because clearly he's got enough money to only be him and his brother Matt as the two owners. Although usually when massive billionaires come in, they also want to have a couple local, in minority investor owners, kind of help them give the lay of the land, maybe introduce them to more. Although in this case, again, Justin is in Chicago. He does all his $11.2 billion funds that he has in his capital fund that he does in Chicago. So it's not like he needs a ton of like movers and shakers where Jerry was coming in from, Brooklyn, that type of stuff. John Greenberg, and I'm trying to get him on the show. He's obviously busy this week with the combine, so I'm going to try to effort him to get him on the show next week. But Greenberg also, he clarified some of his reporting on 670 The Score's Mully and Haw show. He did say he was actually surprised by the Sox official stance that this deal is not a path for additional team control, as most of the sources that he spoke with felt that the end game is Ishbia taking over the White Sox at some point. Even said one source compared it to the situation in Cleveland, where RIP to Lawrence Dolan, the Guardians owner who just passed away at 94. He passed away yesterday, so RIP to that. But the situation is David Blitzer, who also has minority stakes in the Sixers and the Devils, recently purchased a 25% stake in the Guardians with a 6-year option to eventually buy out the Dolan family. But Greenberg just thinks, the Sox are just taking the stance because Jerry doesn't want any outside forces like the press dictating when he's going to announce his succession plan. He doesn't want to be told what to do. And I think also, this is just my gut and, connecting the dots. I don't think Jerry wants to look at his his mortality. He keeps joking around like, I plan on being around here for 10 years. Jerry, that's not your call. Okay. You may be worth $2 billion, but you're not worth enough to say, well, God, it's 98 years old. Let's call it a day. That type of stuff. That's all outside of our control. Greenberg even speculated maybe the increase in minority ownership comes with Ishbia. And he also, Greenberg wrote this, he's got a piece in The Athletic right now today too, that this actually just could be a right of first refusal for Ishbia. So obviously the team, upon Jerry's passing, because again, that is what Jerry has dictated to his heirs, that the team would still go to the open market, but obviously Ishbia would have the right of first refusal. He would be the first guy to make the bid, or he can match a bid, that type of stuff. So that could be why the White Sox are just being defiant, is in the details that, well, no, it doesn't mean Ishbia is taking over at some point. It just means he's buying up minority shares because he sees an investment opportunity to help develop the 78, and he's seeing that. So he's going to help invest into there. And then, yes, if he does want to take over the White Sox, he would have the right of first refusal. But I would say this too, Jerry, just let the man buy you out. Just have the condition that you sit with the owner's box. I mean, I don't get this weird obsession that Jerry has that he has to be in control, especially of a game that has evolved beyond his comprehension. He's even admitted he doesn't like the economics of baseball. He doesn't like what it's become. He doesn't like his competitors, bidding $200 million for a shortstop hitting 210, completely ignoring that his OPS is probably over 750, because I'm sure he was saying that about Carlos Correa. Super scouts doesn't work anymore, Jerry. And even if the Sox had the collection of the greatest scouts of all time, other teams have found better and more modern ways to develop players. Because that's the other reason why the Sox are in such disarray right now. They have been not only passed by, they have been lapped immensely by other teams because of this belief of super scouts that Kenny Williams had and Jerry had himself. That you don't need data and analytics. You just need your gut and TW. No. Teams have actually, and none of that, even if you had a collection of super scouts, guys that could just identify the talent, you don't have the infrastructure to develop them, or at least properly. Teams have even found more modern ways to find talented players, and they don't need as many scouts or coaches because you can just set up, an iPad, bunch of cameras. They can analyze the swing, give the data, and say, here's the adjustments you need to make, or with the pitch. Here's how you need to grip the ball. Here's how you need to do it. That type of stuff. You can work smarter, not harder in today's day and age. That's the other problem with super scouts. Now, to be fair, and it hurts to say it, maybe Jerry, again, has finally realized his legacy at this point will be the guy that let the franchise go from World Series to 19 years later, the worst team ever in the history of baseball. So he is trying to make sure that he's leaving the hints that, hey, I want to leave this team in a better place, even though I let it rot and decay. And it does sound like he's laying the groundwork to leave the franchise in a place where it can have some momentum, similar to what the Chicago Blackhawks had after old man Wirtz passed away. I mean, think about it. In season, Blackhawks games were on television after Bill Wirtz passed away. I mean, you clearly could tell Rocky Wirtz had a lot of things in place because there was a succession plan in place. So this just sounds like, finding a massively wealthy next owner who actually loves baseball, who might think of this as, again, when it comes to his hobby, I want to win, I want to be competitive. So I'm going to finance a nice new ballpark on the 78, and I'm going to try to put anything I can into having a competitive roster. That's a dream. And maybe Jerry does finally realize that. Although, again, there's still nothing wrong with Sox Park. I mean, you could develop Comiskeyville, for example, around, Rate Field. You could do that. But either way, making sure you find an owner willing to keep the team in Chicago, even though Jerry himself took a meeting with the mayor of Nashville to kind of give the spooky, I could be moving the team if I don't get my fully funded taxpayer facility. And then also, even though he said, well, I was just trying to help out Dave Stewart, even though Dave Stewart's name was leaked as the first interested buyer who had deep ties to the Nashville expansion, you do get rid of the one dark cloud hanging over the organization by tapping into Ishbia and making sure that, yes, he is the future owner because he's in Chicago. He's building a Winnetka compound worth $80 million, more than any free agent contract the White Sox have ever given out, as John Greenberg pointed out. You also will eliminate the dark cloud of Jerry always being unwilling to spend enough money to win a championship. The Ishbias have already proven with the Phoenix Suns, they are willing to take big swings to win, even though the Suns are not winning much right now and they have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You would also remove the other dark cloud that ownership treats its fans like dirt. We're always falling for the banana in the tailpipe because the Ishbias have made it clear, take care of the fan and making money will take care of itself. So guarded optimism, fine. I'll have it. And I actually suggest you do the same because we are White Sox fans. We've always had the rug pulled out from under us, except in 2005. But at the same time, I'm going to be hopeful. Well, who needs spring training when the White Sox already look like they're in midseason form? And I'll discuss why that's not a good thing next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so it's only been 3 games into spring training, but the Sox have already figuratively played their clown show hits. I mean, I do think if the White Sox had an album of greatest hits, it would be called Clown Show. You've had defensive gaffes. That took place in the first exhibition game. Blowing a lead late. That happened in the second. And now getting blown out in the first inning and having no hope of coming back can be checked off the list. 3 games into spring training, and this club is looking more like the one that everyone is fearing could flirt with 120 losses again, rather than just return to run-of-the-mill bad. Because that's the fear, that this team is not variance-proof. Because the one reason why the White Sox are projected to win 60 games by like Pagoda and Zips is a lot of it is just variance. Nobody has said the talent has been upgraded. In fact, all the prognosticators, the experts, all that, even from what I've seen, with the signings, even though they're practical and prudent, has actually not made the talent better. In fact, by trading Garrett Crochet away, you could argue the White Sox have gotten worse from a team that lost 121 games last year. But yesterday's spring training game, your Chicago White Sox were already out of the game by the first inning when the Texas Rangers put up 9 runs. Now, obviously, there's some context worth noting as to why the Sox got in such a hole so quickly, because, again, it's spring training, so no need to be like, here we go again, but whoa. First 3 games I've seen in spring training, in the dry Arizona air that favors hitting, you've seen hardly any offense, and again, you've been seeing the clown show hits. In this case, Rule 5 pick, the number 1 pick in the Rule 5 draft, Shane Smith, player that the Sox were high on, clearly looked nervous in his first spring training start as he walked the first 2 batters, and it was just all downhill from there. He was so bad in that inning that manager Will Venable had to use the exception you get in spring training where you can take actually a pitcher out of an inning, and then you can put him back in the next inning. That's how bad he was. And you can do that in spring training because, again, a lot of it is just you're working on things. I've seen games end obviously in ties because both managers want to get to dinner, or they'll only play like maybe 10 or 11 innings, that type of stuff. And you got to make sure the umpires stay, because I do believe one game, I forget which team it had, but I remember a game ended in a tie. The managers discussed like, hey, let's have a few more innings because we want to work on some things. And the umpires had already taken off. They were gone. They're like, we got a tea time. We ain't sticking around in this Arizona sun for this. But anyways, Smith came back in the second inning, easy 1-2-3 inning. So you could clearly tell there was some nerves. And also why the White Sox got down 9 runs is they went with Chris Rodriguez, a pitcher you will likely never hear from again, to finish out that miserable first. But again, the reason why I bring this up is you keep seeing these terrible themes of the 2024 season already creeping in to the exhibition season in 2025. The hope was Will Venable would fix some of this stuff as a new manager. And this, hey, we're going to focus on, getting on base more. That'll fix some of the offense. And you're just not seeing it right now. But again, they've only been practicing for about 10 days. So you can't get too concerned. Still time to clean things up. But this 3-game introduction we've seen really is hammering home the point that this is going to take a long, long time to get everything cleaned up. Like, you're talking about multiple drafts, multiple international free agent signings, classes, and eventually adding players through free agency when Justin Ishbia is hopefully the new owner. Was everything, though, terrible yesterday? No. Kyle Teal, he got into the game finally. I think he finally made his first spring training appearance. He drew 2 walks, and he showed some really good base running skills on an Oscar Colas double. Got a great jump on it late in the game, and even Steve Stone thought at first, why is Teal being sent home? But he beat the throw to the plate by at least a step or 2. And I get Steve Stone saying, like, why are we sending him? Like, he was like, oh no, here's the next theme, bad base running. But Teal got a great jump. There's some video up on it on, I know, on X, formerly Twitter. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube too. So it was a nice just display of those natural skills that you can also use on the Jump to Conclusions mat that shows Teal might be able to play other positions other than catcher. And that's why he should likely go to AAA, at least to get just some more reps at framing, because they're asking all of these catchers to update, get better at framing, because you got Walker McKinven now. But also get him some reps in the outfield before you bring him up full time. So that's, where I'm at with Kyle Teal. Definitely impressed. Working the count, getting on base, good base running skills there. hopefully we see, obviously, the bat, at least show some promise in more spring training games. I actually thought Jacob Gonzalez had a nice at bat where he ripped a double. Looks like he did some more tinkering with his swing as well. And you would love for him to get back on an upward trajectory since he is a former first round pick. And man, has he been sliding down the White Sox, prospect rankings. But you do see him, like I was watching him in the box on the CHSN broadcast, and you're like, man, he does have some ideal size for a shortstop. Although Chase Meidroth, on the other hand, he got the start at short, really showed off that limited range. I forgot who hit the ball. It was in the first inning. It was basically a bouncer, towards second, but shaded towards shortstop. And Meidroth had a shot at the ball. Not even close, though. He does look stiff at short. So obviously it's an example of why he might be better suited to play second. But hey, a beefed up Miguel Vargas got a hit. And Will Venable has said Vargas is the primary third baseman, thus ending any notion of a competition there. And let's discuss if that's the right call, and we'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And I always maintain, FanDuel's traditional spreads, the money lines, and the over-unders, they're fun to play. But what they give for the futures, the parlays, and the props in terms of the lines, that's where you can hit it big or at least double your money. So I would say futures, parlays, props, that's the way to go when you're playing FanDuel. Plus, the app is easy to use. And if you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Feel free to leave a 5-star review. We're at a 4.5 rating. Let's get that rating up, and for especially the haters, you know what? Let's shout them out, because there are a lot of trolls in this world, and man, they have really emerged in our community right now with the Mike Clevenger news. And again, if you're gonna be like, for example, call me boring, or if you're going to, call me out and defend Mike Clevenger, like I said, put your name on it. Stop hiding behind a screen name. Okay? That's all I'm saying. We can disagree. And even if you want to have a disagreement, that's fine, but use better logic. Don't play the hits, that type of stuff. Anyways, Miguel Vargas has already won the third base job, according to SoxMachine.com. Sox beat reporter James Fegan. He actually reported this on Blue Sky at jrfegan.soxmachine.com. I've got the note up on YouTube for those watching, but for those listening via Apple or Spotify, Fegan reports, Will Venable said the White Sox view Miguel Vargas as their primary option at third base. He's worked a little at first base this camp, but the bulk of his time will be at third. So primary option. Guess there wasn't much of a competition, although kind of hard to have one when Brian Ramos has an elbow injury where he can hit, obviously, but he still can't throw. So you really can't pit those two against each other. So pretty much it's Vargas's job, and in a way makes sense. Especially look at the offseason work Vargas did at the plate, the kitchen plate. Hey, see, for those that say I'm boring, there's your comedy. But Vargas bulked up this offseason, although all he said was he just ate more beans and rice. I hope it involves some weights, and doesn't involve a suspension or anything like that. But it makes sense to say he's the opening day third baseman. Because look, everydayers, you've heard me say I'm willing to give him another shot. I am. And I get the investment that they made. He's still in that sweet spot where maybe he needs just a full season. And he needs to know that he is the guy. That it's not 81 games. And if you're not producing, you're out of here, because the Dodgers just could not be patient with him. However, I would very much like it to prefer give Vargas another shot as the everyday first baseman and get Andrew Vaughn up out of here. Yeah, hot takey here, I know, but I don't agree, and I never have, with paying Vaughn close to $6 million, basically for a replacement level play, when the cost-conscious Sox probably could have gotten the same production Vaughn has provided over the last 4 years at a fraction of the cost. And maybe then, and Fegan wrote this on SoxMachine.com, maybe then, having a little bit of extra money, the Sox could maybe have afforded to sign a strikeout pitcher in the free agent market to make up for the loss of Garrett Crochet's, $200K now going to Boston. So it's weak contact for everyone, because that's a solution the Sox are going with to make up for the lack of outs where the ball is just not put in play. Because the White Sox have lost a lot of strikeouts with Garrett Crochet being gone. And again, you look at Vargas's defensive metrics at first. And yes, it's limited. I believe it's just 55 innings. But you look at those compared to Vaughn's 2 years worth of metrics and some change when he did play, first base on the days that Jose Abreu was DHing. And I'll take the net neutral Vargas rather than Vaughn's immense negative fielding value any day. Plus, the other reason is Josh Rojas's glove is just much better at the hot corner than it is at second. If you're going with weak contact and thus using defense to get outs, you want to have your best gloves out there, and in the best way they can help you get those outs. So, as I've said a few episodes back, I have no problem giving Vargas another run. I'm just not here for the BS excuses for him possibly being a failed hype prospect, because you do have to take that into account, that he just might be a 4A player. He might be able to rake at AAA, but when he gets to the major leagues, he just can't hit major league velocity. And also stop with he wasn't given much of a runway. I get it in a certain context, but he was still given 400 at bats with the Dodgers. Okay. So let's not act like he was just never given a chance to play at all. Like Lenine Sosa going up, down, up, down, up, down. Like, he was given an opportunity. Maybe though, the pressure of you got to hit, you got to produce because we're in win now, maybe that did get into his head a little bit. But man, the inability to hit heat did show up yesterday. First at bat, I was like, dang. And I looked at his first at bat, I was watching it, and I was like, man, if only he could hit major league fastballs, you could see it. I could see what everybody's seeing, the Vargas bros, because he actually had a good at bat before striking out. He goes down 0-2, but he works the count back to 2-2. Struck out swinging on a 93 mile per hour high fastball. And you were like, man, I get it, folks. I see it. I see what you're seeing too. But then the problem of hitting the fastball comes up. He's just got to figure out a way to catch up. Now, John Triffin did say during the broadcast, the organization did ask him to work on his swing in the offseason. Why they didn't ask him to work on anything when they acquired him in August and September when they were going absolutely nowhere. Well, they didn't want to put too much on his plate when he came over. And actually, you know what? I'm not upset, even though I phrased it kind of like I was upset, because that guy looked traumatized once he came to the South Side. I mean, every time they showed him, man looks like he was being held hostage. So hopefully the added weight and the swing tinkering unlocks him, because he is your opening day third baseman. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout spring training. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'll be back tomorrow with Courtney Finicum of Baseball Isn't Boring to get her take on the Sox as they head into the 2025 season and why the Mike Clevenger re-signing is just icky. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion on the additional details around Justin Ishbia's pursuit of increasing his stake in the White Sox, yesterday's 11-3 pounding showing a lot of the running themes from last season, and Miguel Vargas being given the opening day third base job. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.